Hi, when you're struggling in a relationship, sometimes you can sort of meet your breaking point. So you're in this difficult thing and you keep trying to do stuff over and over. And it's like when this doesn't work and this doesn't fix it and this isn't helping, then you can finally come to a place where it's really all you're left to think is, do I go or do I stay, right? Should I stay or should I leave? And that can be a really hard question. And I know some people who have asked themselves that question for years. So that's not really a simple question oftentimes that you can just answer, make a decision, find a resolution. Sometimes you do get to a place where it is that easy, but for many of us, it's, have I really tried everything? Did I really turn over every stone? How do I know when it's enough? That's a really hard question to answer. And a lot of times there is no real clear answer, but there is another option. What you can do instead is take a look and try to see if maybe you are in a toxic cycle with that person. So if it's a toxic relationship or a toxic cycle, either way, you're probably in some sort of a toxic cycle because toxic relationships are filled with toxic cycles. So all of this is coming from Have You Had Enough? How to Break Up with Your Toxic Cycle. You can find it on Amazon. There's also a PDF on my website that's going to walk you through it. But here are some things to consider. When you map out, instead of trying to figure out your whole life or figure out if this relationship is over or not, if you instead focus on something that's a bit more practical, like mapping out a toxic cycle, either way, it's going to give you a lot of information. So you're kind of collecting all this data that you can then sort through and look at, and this is going to give you an opportunity to try to interrupt it. So once you understand your toxic cycle and you go through the steps of interrupting it, if it's not a toxic relationship and if there is hope for the relationship, then once you interrupt this toxic cycle, it's going to get better. But if you're in a toxic relationship and not just a toxic cycle, chances are you're going to find another toxic cycle. That's okay, because then you can work towards interrupting that. And if you interrupt that and find another one, work towards interrupting that. But if you find, wow, it's just one after another after another. If it's not A, then it's B. If it's not B, then it's C. And if I'm working on C, then it's D, right? So if you notice that it just seems to be never-ending toxic cycles, that's going to give you a lot of information that's ultimately going to help you make your decision. Because it's, if I stay here, this is what it will be. It's going to continue to be toxic cycles over and over and over. That lets me know this is a toxic relationship. And remember, toxic cycles can get better. You can actually exit them. You can overcome them. You can move on from them, never to enter them again. And the relationship can get so much better. Your self-esteem can come back. Your joy can come back. You can find hope again. But if it's a toxic relationship, those just get worse. Those don't get better. Those don't end. Your misery just like exponentially increases until it ends. So instead of trying to figure out your whole life with this person or the whole relationship, instead, what you can do is try to focus on, let me see if I can just map out this toxic cycle and make sense of it first. That gives our brain much more to work with than just this huge answer of do I stay or do I go? So here are 3 traits of a toxic cycle. So this is how you're going to know, oh, this is how I know if I need to map out a toxic cycle and work towards interrupting it. So this, again, is from Have You Had Enough? It's on page 5. So here is trait number 1. It's the same fight over and over. I think anyone who has experienced that knows how miserable that is. Sorry, my dog's scratching his ear, which is making him shake the table. Okay. So number 1, same fight over and over. So feeling like you're in a time warp, having the same conversation over and over, same fight over and over with no hope to resolve the issue. So sometimes you sit down really hoping to have some sort of a resolution. That's the point of this conversation, but it becomes pretty clear pretty quickly, right? There's never a resolution. It's just more fighting, more misery, more crying, more arguing, more yelling, right? So in realizing that this starts with a lot of hope to resolve it, but there never seems to be a resolution. The resolution never seems to come. That's a sign you're in a toxic cycle. Second one, there's a pattern to your fighting. So you can measure it by maybe the day of the week, right? When you sit, and it's funny how we can go through this sometimes for years and never realize, oh yeah, this happens every Friday, or every time we want to go to my parents' house, or every time a holiday comes up, or every time XYZ, right? There's usually a pattern, or there's almost always a pattern when you're dealing with the toxic cycle. So this is the beauty of mapping it out, because when Friday comes, you're not so upset or so like shocked by it, right? Because when I don't know if it's denial or what it is, but when you're not aware that it's every Friday, you may start every Friday with so much hope for the weekend. And then that disappointment is great when you're not prepared for it, right? It's sort of like being really vulnerable. You're really open, excited, hopeful. And then to have it all just dashed is devastating. But when you map out your toxic cycle, then you're more aware of it and you realize, oh, it's Friday. Chances are this cycle's going to come around. And that's prior to interrupting it. So check for the pattern. Could be the day of the week. Number 3, do you fight after one or both of you are around a specific person in your life? For example, do you get into a fight or an argument every time one of you is around certain family or friends? So maybe every time they go to the gym and they're around a certain group of people, then you notice, oh wow, we have a fight every time. Or they're around a certain friend, or maybe you're around a certain friend, or every time they go home, or every time you go home. So just looking, it's not about finding blame that you can assign to a group of people or an entity. It's really more about understanding for yourself what you're dealing with or what you're in. So then you know that if they are at their families, you're kind of more mindful when they come home. What is this going to look like? This is important because ultimately what we want to do is map out an exit for our toxic cycle so that we can stay out of it. So now you know, oh, if the tendency is for after they've left that person, after I have, then we're going to get into our cycle. I already have exits set up and strategies in place that don't allow me to enter it. That's the point of identifying it. So that's why we want to write it down and map it out. And it's actually not very complicated. It may sound like a complex idea, but the PDF that's on my website, Overcoming Your Toxic Cycle, you can download that. It's 99 cents, I think, so it's not expensive. You buy it once, and the great thing is you can use that same outline in any relationship you have that you're struggling in. Because the beautiful part of it is if you're having the same fight more than once, and it seems really outrageous, or like, why is this the deal breaker? Why is this such a big deal? That's prick our ear like, it might be a toxic cycle. So you just follow the formula, you walk through the questions, helps you identify what exactly is the toxic cycle, and this is how we can take steps to overcome it. It's really eye-opening. Once you map it out and answer the questions, you learn so much more about your cycle, and that's so empowering because that's how you're going to overcome it and get out of it. So again, you can find all of this from Have You Had Enough? It's on Amazon.com, which has everything in it you're going to need for your toxic cycle and how to overcome it. Or you can go to relationaltrauma101.podia.com, and there you can download that PDF. You can print it out and write in it, or you can also just look at it on your screen, take a piece of paper and answer the questions. So I'm hoping all the best for you. I'm hoping you're actually not in a toxic cycle, but I am more than anything hoping that if you are, you're going to figure out how to map it out and feel empowered and get your hope back. So take good care, and I'm gonna see you in the next one.